Hey, what's good, everybody? It's your boy, I am Nelson89, and I want to welcome you guys back to my channel for a brand new video. So, today's video, I wanted to talk about my favorite Snoop Dogg albums post Death Row. And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because, there's a lot of people out there that I find they seem to think that Snoop only put out one classic album, and that was Doggystyle. Or a lot of people feel that after he left Death Row Records, Snoop fell off, and the material he did post Death Row just wasn't that great. And you know what? To each his own. People have the right to feel however they want to feel when it comes to their favorite artist, to their music, whatever it is they like. But me personally, man, Snoop Dogg is my favorite rapper of all time. I don't really get into the whole top 5 or top 10 list, but if I did have a top 10 list, or if somebody asked me who my number one favorite rapper was of all time, I'm gonna automatically say Snoop Dogg. Some people may think Tupac, because I did go through a Tupac phase for a long time, but it's really Snoop. It's really Snoop, especially back when I was really into like rapping and stuff like that. Snoop was one of my main influences when it came to me wanting to rap and things of that nature. But I have a I have a pretty good collection of his albums. I don't have all of his stuff because there was a period in his career where I kind of fell off from him because his music, his albums started to become hit or miss, and I kind of felt like he was jumping on trends and not really being Snoop. But there's been in recent years some albums that he's dropped where he's come back to form and he's really put out some quality material. But for this video, I just wanted to focus on my favorite Snoop Dogg albums post Death Row. So I got 8 CDs right here that I managed to pick as my favorites that I really enjoyed from him, beyond Death Row Records. And so the fact that I got 8 CDs that I can pick, that's really good. That goes to show that Doggystyle wasn't his only classic record. That Snoop has a lot of classics under his belt with the many years that he's been in the game. And he's pretty much transcended beyond just being a hip hop artist. I mean, Snoop is a pop cultural icon, and I may not agree with everything that he says and does, especially in the past few years, but I still respect him as an artist, and he'll always be one of my favorite MCs. He'll always be my number one favorite MC of all time. All right, so without further ado, don't want to make this video too long, so let's get into the 8 CDs that I picked. And again, these are my favorite Snoop Dogg albums post Death Row. All right, so the first album I want to show is No Limit Top Dog. Let me scoot up right quick so you guys can see this. No Limit Top Dog, released in 1999. This was his second album, released on No Limit Records. And I know my mom, she actually bought me this CD for Christmas one year, maybe about a couple of years after it came out. And I still had that CD, but it's not in good shape. So I found this at a record store that I go to. I found a used copy that was in good shape, pretty decent price, $9.99. Comes with the original liner notes, with the No Limit advertisements and stuff like that. But yeah, the CD was in real good shape. I mean, it looks like it was brand new, man. But yeah, this was his second album on No Limit Records. His first one was The Game Is to Be Sold, Not to Be Told. Uh, I didn't really include that album because that album used to be one of my favorite Snoop albums when I was younger. But as I gotten older, I don't really think it's one of his best works, and I don't really listen to it that much either. But No Limit Top Dog, this was the album that I feel it it brought Snoop back to prominence, and it gave him his second career, and it established his longevity, in my opinion. I think this was the album to do that because after he left Death Row, when he signed to No Limit, people were very doubtful if Snoop could really repeat the same success that he had when he was with Death Row. And the first album that he came off with on No Limit, The Game Is to Be Sold, Not to Be Told, even though that's a very popular album in the South because it came out in '98, and that was the year when No Limit was really running things. And it does have some good tracks on there. That album really didn't it didn't really help to curb those people's doubts. It really didn't help. It's not really looked at as one of his best works. There are some good songs on that album, and it was the first time where you really heard Snoop rapping over Southern beats, which is something he's very adaptable to nowadays. I mean, he's a very versatile MC. He can rap over any type of track, quite honestly. But this album right here, this was Snoop's comeback as far as the sort of slump that he was dealing with from his transition from Death Row to No Limit. This was the album that brought him back to prominence. Because when the song "Be Please" featuring Exhibit dropped, that was a huge hit in '99. I remember seeing that video all the time on BET's Rap City. They played it on MTV. That that song was a big hit, and that was also my introduction into Exhibit as well. And it was a huge hit. Dr. Dre was back on boards producing Snoop, and Nate Dogg was featured on the track. It was such a catchy song, and it was one of the biggest hip hop songs of '99. I've always said that song and Eminem's "My Name Is" what got me back into listening to hip hop, because there was a period after Tupac and Biggie got killed where I stopped listening to hip hop because at that time I was a kid. I was like 6 or 7 years old. I didn't really understand the whole just of the whole beef between Pac and Big. I just saw two rappers being murdered, and I didn't want to listen to a genre where rappers were being murdered. So there was about a year and a half where I stopped listening to hip hop. But that song, "Be Please," was one of the first ones that it really got me back into the genre as a kid. But furthermore, uh, like I said, Dr. Dre is back on here producing. DJ Quick has got some tracks on here. He's got some dope tracks on here that he's produced. And this is Snoop being Snoop. I think what really made the Game Is to Be Sold not really be that good of a record is that it was more so Snoop doing No Limit. That was mainly him. That was mainly just introducing him as being part of the No Limit family for the most part. So it was more beats being produced by Beats by the Pound on that record. It didn't really have a West Coast sound, except for the song "Still a G Thing," and there was one song in there called "Don't Let Go" that was produced by DJ Daryl and stuff of that nature. But that was more so Snoop just doing No Limit. This is Snoop being Snoop on No Limit, and everything from the album cover. Look at the album cover. That album cover. Hold on for a minute. Look at the album cover. That album cover is not typical of what No Limit was doing at the time. No Limit was well known for their very extravagant, outrageous pen and pixel covers with diamonds and stuff. And there actually was an original cover for this album that was like that, that was included in the Game Is to Be Sold liner notes. But this is the album cover. That's not typical of No Limit. So this is Snoop being Snoop, and the sound on this record uh, evokes that because Dr. Dre's back on boards producing for him. A lot of the songs are very West Coast based, and he really just took it back, man. I would say that this album, you could say that this album was kind of like somewhat of an extension of Doggystyle in some ways, and with the G Funk atmosphere and everything. The first time I heard Sugar Free was on this album, and a lot of great songs on here. The first song that starts off the album, "Buckum," which features Sticky Fingers of Onyx on the hook. Great way to set the album off and to set the tone. Another Dr. Dre banger. And I really enjoy how Dre, he, it's a West Coast track, but I like the drums. The drums, it's like a mixture of the West Coast and the East Coast because it has those West Coast kind of guitars in it, but then it has these hard hitting boom bap beats, which I thought was really good. And Snoop just comes on the track and just rips it. And then of course you have "Down for My N Words," which features C Murder and Magic, which is a timeless classic right there. That song will still get people turned up. Uh, I think C Murder even had it on his Trapped in Crime album in a slightly altered version. But that's another classic song right there. Then you have "Gangsta Ride" featuring Silta Shaka. which I think is one of Silk the Shocker's best verses. You know, he's not Silk the Shocker is not typically known as a great rapper, but he does pull off some solid verses depending on the type of beat that he's on. And this type of beat, that's where Silk shines. Then you got Ghetto Symphony, which is a posse cut featuring a good bit of the No Limit Soldiers, man. Mia X, Fiend, C Murder, Silk the Shocker, Mystical, and Goldie Low. It's like an interpolation of the Symphony by Cold Chillin'. You know, with Marley Marl, the Juice Crew, when they did the Symphony back in the day, this is a it's an interpolation of that song, and everybody comes on there and kicks freestyles, and everybody comes with their A game, man. But I don't. I think I know Mystical and Fiend really had some tight verses, man. And then you got Party with a DPG, Bussin' Rocks, which I believe Bussin' Rocks is a DJ Quick produced track. And then my favorite one on here is Don't Tell, the smooth R&B flavored one, which features Warren G, Mossberg, R.I.P. to him, and Nate Dogg. You know, just another DJ Quick produced track, man, which is just dope, man. But all around, man, I think this is one of Snoop's best records in my opinion, and it's a classic. And I know it was a huge hit with the fans and critics. So many people looked at this album as Snoop returning to form, and he did that. He really came through with this record. So, uh, No Limit Top Dog is one of my picks for favorite Snoop Dogg albums post Death Row. Okay, so next album, and this is another one of my favorites, man. This was actually the first Snoop Dogg album I bought on CD, man, and that is The Last Meal, released in 2000. Released in 2000, man. Let me tell you something. Having this again just brings back so many memories because I was in the sixth grade when this album dropped. I think it dropped. Yeah, I was still in school. Yeah, school was still in session when it dropped, but I think it really took off during the summer. It took off during the summer of that year, I believe. But man, people always talk about Snoop Dogg can never make an album that comes close to being as good as Doggystyle. Let me tell you something. To all you detractors out there that say that Snoop will never make a Doggystyle Part Two or whatever, let me tell you something. This is it right here. The Last Meal. This is like Doggystyle Part Two. This is it right here. Look at the album cover. The album cover is drawn by his cousin Joe Cool, who drew the cover for Doggystyle. And look, it even has a comic. Remember Doggystyle had the comic book, the little comic in it. This album has the comic in it. You see what I'm saying? This album has the comic in it. Look at the back cover. Look at the back cover. The back cover is kind of similar to the back cover of Doggystyle. This is it right here. This is it right here. And it has that. He even takes the G funk sound not to the next level, but the G funk sound is more prominent on this record. This album right here was the beginning of that whole little West Coast renaissance that was happening in the late '90s and early 2000s. I don't think a lot of people remember that there was a little West Coast renaissance that was happening in the early 2000s where a lot of West Coast artists were putting out a lot of hits and selling a lot of records. And this was one of the records. I think this album was the beginning of it. That and the East Sider's first album. But yeah, man, this is a great. I mean, come on. This album has What's My Name Part 2. Come on, What's My Name Part 2? That was the first single from the record, which was a huge hit. And everybody used to repeat that one line in the hook where he says blow smoke in your eyes, blow smoke till your eyes get cataracts. Everybody used to repeat that song all the time. Every day at school I used to hear people quoting that blow smoke till your eyes get cataracts. Huge hit, man. Then Lay Low is also on this album, which was another huge hit for Snoop, man. That song was huge. And then The Wrong Idea, that's not even a Snoop Dogg song. That's actually a badass song. But it was included on The Last Meal first. But that song was huge. Wrong Idea, that's a timeless classic. And it's got everybody on there. It's got badass, it's got cocaine on there. That was a huge hit as well. And then I know the song called Stacey Adams. that's like a hood favorite right there. The song called Stacey Adams was smooth, kind of smooth R&B, jazzy type song, and Snoop just comes on there with his smooth, charismatic flow. That's it's Snoop in full pimp mode on that Stacey Adams song. And then let's see here, Losing Control, which was I think that was like the final single from the album. That was a big hit too in 2001. I'm trying to think. What was my favorite song on here? Oh yeah, track number 17, Leave Me Alone. I think that was the first song that Snoop actually fully sang on. A really great G-Funk track. Smooth G-Funk track. One of my all-time favorite Snoop Dogg songs. I always enjoy riding to that song. It just brings back so many great memories from that period, man. I remember my mom, she took me to we went to Best Buy because I bought this album during that summer, and it was like maybe a couple of days after school let out. My mom, my aunt, and my grandmother, we all went down to gas. Well, this smaller. I'm not gonna name the city, but this little smaller city. Well, we went to a Best Buy that was not too far from where we were from, and that's when Best Buy was really popping back then. Best Buy was really popping. They had a really great CD selection, and she bought this for me. And man, I continue to rock this CD forever, man. I know I rocked it for at least a couple of years, man, because that's just how good it is, man. Like this was my doggy style, honestly. The Last Meal, because I was a toddler when Doggy Style came out. I was like what 3 or 4 years old when that album came out. I definitely wasn't hearing Doggy Style back then, but such a great album, such a great album, and people don't talk about The Last Meal that much, man, and I don't know why, cause it's so good, man. And what's some other tracks on here? Oh yeah, the song called "Set It Off," which had MC Ren from NWA. He was on there. The Lady of Rage, Nate Dogg, Ice Cube was on the hook. That was another dope track, man. And I didn't realize it back then, but then MC Ren took a little shot at Tamika Wright on his verse, man. But MC Ren had the best verse, man. He just came hard as always, man. And he took that little shot at Tamika Wright, because she had pretty much messed up Ruthless Records. But so many great songs on here. Eve, she's on here. This is on her Rough Rider days. She's on the song called Ready to Ride. Just a great song, man, and just a great album in general, man. One of my all time favorite Snoop Dogg albums. You can tell by my enthusiasm talking about this record. That's one of my favorites, man. But yeah, anybody that thinks that Snoop Dogg has never made any album that has come close to being as good as Doggystyle, then you definitely have not heard The Last Meal. Cause this is it right here. So definitely, if you ain't never listened to The Last Meal, I don't know where you've been. You're missing out on a great hip hop album, a great West Coast hip hop album right here. And this was his last one for No Limit. After this, he had formed his own label, Doggystyle Records, and so forth. But yeah, man, The Last Meal, Doggystyle Part Two, honestly. All right, so the next record is on my list of favorites. Paid the Cost to Be the Boss, man. Released in 2002. Another good album. Yeah, I remember my homeboy. He had this CD, man, and me and him used to jam out to it on the school bus. Cause I remember what really got me into this album was that intro song called not Don Doggy, but the second track called "The Boss Would Like to See You." But yeah, man, this I think this is the album that really took Snoop to the next level. Check out that poster. I wish that had been the album cover. That initially I think it was the album cover because that's what he used to promote the album, like in the magazines. I used to get the Source magazine back then. But yeah, this is this is where Snoop was really starting to go to the next level. This is where he was already a rap star, but this was him becoming an icon. This was him becoming a pop cultural icon. This album right here. Because it introduced because look at some of the things that he came out. The Snoop Dogg clothing line was coming out around this time. And you remember those action figures, the Snoop Dogg dolls? This was around that era, man. This was around that era. So yeah, this was when Snoop was really going to the next level and becoming an icon. And it was also during his uh his time as a pimp. His time as a pimp. You know, Don Magic Juan was really behind him on this record and stuff like this. And it was also this was also in the midst of like the whole beef between him and Suge. And it was also around the time when the Dog Pound had broken up because not Daz, but Corrupt had decided to go back to Death Row and become vice president, which he did it because he was having financial troubles. And yeah, the Dog Pound was kind of the Dog Pound wasn't really together at that time. And you know the song called Pimp Slap, which was a diss towards them and the Road Records, because yeah, they was all going back and forth around this time. This was during the heat of that whole period, that whole beef. But other than that, some positive things is though from the Church to the Palace, that was I believe the first single from the album, huge hit, produced by Pharrell and featuring Pharrell. But it was the next song called Beautiful. That was the one that took Snoop to the next level. Again, featuring Pharrell and Charlie Wilson, who has been a frequent collaborator for Snoop since what, the Doggfather. But Beautiful. I wanna say, was that Snoop's first number one hit? I don't know. I don't know if that was his first number one hit, but I know that was a hugely successful song. I mean, that song took off. Beautiful took off because it started getting played in like commercials and mainstream movies and everything. That video got hella airplay on like MTV. I think he even saw it on VH1 a few times. But it was definitely getting hella airplay on MTV and BET and MTV too back then. So that video was getting a lot of airplay, man. But other than that, man, you had some really good tracks on here, like the song called "Ballin'" featuring the Dramatics, and that "Papered Up," which was kind of like a remake of "Paid in Full" by Eric B and Rakim. Cause Snoop, for the most part, Snoop kind of covers like Rakim's verses. He just switches it up a little bit. Then you got a Boss Player, which is uh a dedication to the pimp game. You see Hourglass. Oh, I missed that. I missed that bitch. Which was produced by DJ Premier. And Snoop's verse was actually at the time I think Snoop had stopped smoking marijuana. He had stopped smoking weed. And I didn't realize that at first when I first bought this album back in the day. Well, when my mom bought it for me. But I didn't realize his verse was about weed. I didn't realize it until years later. I thought he was actually talking about a woman. But that's produced by DJ Premier. Oh yeah, and the song called "The One and Only." That's another DJ Premier produced song, and that's Snoop pretty much telling his life story as far as like his career, how he got to the point where he is now. And that's another thing, man. He's rhyming over DJ Premier beats, and he's killing it. We need more Snoop Dogg and DJ Premier beats. I hope one day that Snoop Dogg and DJ Premier do a whole freaking album together, because I know that would be amazing. Because there's certain producers out here that really bring the best out of Snoop, and Primo is one of them. And then let's see, from Long Beach to Brick City, which has Warren G, Nate Dogg, and Redman on there. That's a dope track. Suited and Booted, another kind of player pimp approach type track. And then man, let's see, so many. Yeah, there was a lot of good songs on this album, man. I got to be honest with you. I think this was a really solid follow up to the Last Meal. I don't. It may not be as good as the Last Meal, but I really think "Paid the Cost to Be the Boss" was a solid follow up. And no, I listen to this album still today quite a bit, man. It's just an awesome record, man. I think it's one of Snoop's best records. He really did his thing on this album, man. So yeah, "Paid the Cost to Be the Boss," man. And like I said, this is the album that really turned Snoop from just being a rap star to being a pop cultural icon. All right, so next album we got on here is RNG Rhythm and Gangsta. Now this was another huge album for Snoop because this is the album that has Drop It Like It's Hot. And I believe Drop It Like It's Hot was Snoop's first number one album. And yeah, because he said in the interview that he never had a number one record with Dre. He said in an interview around the time that he never had #1 record with Drake, because people were constantly talking about him working with Dr. Dre, and he was kind of saying like, well, I don't need to run to Dre all the time. I have so many other people that I can work with that bring the best out of me. And he said, I drop it like it's hot. That was my first #1 record. And that was with Pharrell. I never had a #1 record with Dre. But yeah, this is the one that has Drop It Like It's Hot. And in my opinion, I say that Drop It Like It's Hot is kind of like that song has done what Gin and Juice had did with Doggystyle. That's what Drop It Like It's Hot has done. Cause Drop It Like It's Hot, that song still gets played in commercials. It still gets played on video games. It still gets played in movies. And he actually made it popular. He actually made that term, Drop It Like It's Hot, popular. And the crazy thing about it is Snoop is not even the one who came up with that. Lil Wayne actually came up with that. Yeah, Drop It Like It's Hot is something that Lil Wayne came up with. Um his verse, Lil Wayne's verse on Juvenile's Back That Thing Up, he says drop it like it's hot on Juvenile's Back That Thing Up. And he also on Wayne's first album, The Block Is Hot, there's a song in there called Drop It Like It's Hot. Yeah, but Wayne is the one who came up with that term, but Snoop just turned it into a famous term, a classic term. But other than that, man, this album, as the title suggests, man, it's like a kind of like a mending of R&B and gangster rap, which I think Snoop did a pretty good job on it, man. Let's see, a lot of great songs on here. Let's see, what's some songs on here? Ups and Downs, which was another big hit off the album, which actually featured the Bee Gees when I think when all of them were still alive, and Let's Get Blown, which was another huge hit produced by Pharrell. Let's see, for the most part, I think I like every song on here. The only songs on here I'm not too crazy about, Step Your Game Up with Lil Jon and Trina. It's not a bad song, but I just don't think it should have been on this album. It kind of broke up the flow of the record because it doesn't really fit in line with the concept of the record, because the concept is like a blending of R&B and gangster rap music, and that song is more like a crunk song, because this is when crunk was still relatively popular, but it was kind of on its way out. It doesn't really fit. It kind of breaks up the monotony of the album and stuff. But there's a lot of good songs on here. Pass It, which is a Smoke song. Let's see, No Thing on Me, which features Bootsy Collins. You say, Can You Control Your Hoe? Yeah, featuring Superfly. That's a cool song. But yeah, another great album from Snoop Dogg. I think he really did it. He did his thing on this one. And actually before I actually had this actual CD version, I had a bootleg version of the album that had a different kind of track list. Because there was a song on that version that he did with Daz. I can't think of the name of it, but it was a pretty solid track too. And there was a couple of other songs on there that's not on the actual album version, but I can't think of them now. But for the RNG is really dope as well, man. Another dope album. All right, so next album is the Blue Carpet Treatment, released in 2006, and this was another great one. This was another great album. And like I said, man, well, I don't think I've said it yet, but I feel like from '99 to 2006, Snoop Dogg was just on a run. He was just on a wave, a pretty long wave too. But yeah, the Blue Carpet Treatment, I've heard a lot of people call this one of Snoop's best albums since Doggystyle, and I can agree, man. It's definitely a great album. I remember this came out when I was in high school. I think I was in my senior year when this album came out. I was the first semester of my senior year, because this album and Jay Z's Kingdom Come, I think they both came out on the same day, and I ended up getting both of them. But this was the one that was really good. I didn't too much care for Jay Z's Kingdom Come. This album right here though was the one. And what was the big hit from this album? That's That with R. Kelly. You know, I understand. I don't even know. I might get demonetized. Well, I'm not monetized anyway, but I don't know if I'm getting in trouble. My channel will get stricken or something for saying R. Kelly. But in spite of everything, that was a really good song. It was a big hit, and I like the way. I don't know who produced the song, but I really like the way that they flipped that "Coming to America" kind of theme song, and how they flipped that part where Hakeem's getting bathed. that song that's playing in the background when Akeem's getting bathed. I like how they flipped that sample in that song. That was real dope. Knots produced it. Okay, Knots produced that song. And Vato was also another hit from this album. That was the first single, I think. Vato would Be Real, but there was a lot of controversy behind that song when it dropped. Let's see, Candy, Dripping Like Water, got E40, MCA, Goldie Low, Daz, and Corrupt. Got that. This is when the hyphy movement had really got mainstream. So the beat has it's in that hyphy flavor. And you could also say that song right here, you could say that this song is kind of the precursor of how Los Angeles hip hop would later evolve. Because if you listen to a lot of the LA rappers now and their sound is very influenced by the Bay Area hyphy movement. So I would say that song Candy was, you could say it's kind of like a precursor to that. Just a lot of good songs on here, man. Gang Banging 101 featuring The Game. Oh yeah, Boss's Life, that was another big hit. The album version has Akon on it, but the single version had Nate Dogg because of contractual, uh, legal contracts or something. They couldn't actually have Nate Dogg on there, and I mean they couldn't have Akon on the single version because of label issues. And then let's see, LAX with Ice Cube, 10 Little Cribs, around here, a B I Knew, which he kind of channels that Too Short, Freaky Tales type vibe, where he's naming all these different women that he's hooked up with and rhyming. And then Conversation, he even got Stevie Wonder on this album. And then Imagine with Dr. Dre and D'Angelo, that was a really high point because D'Angelo, at this point nobody had heard from D'Angelo since since the Voodoo album. And then he pops up on this album out of nowhere. But man, yeah, a lot of good songs on here, man. I want to say that this album was the last in Snoop's wave. Like I said, Snoop had a wave from '99 to 2006, and I think this was the last one after that really ended that wave. Because after this album, his material started to become a bit hit or miss. He dropped the Ego Tripping album the next year, which I do have. I have it over there somewhere, but it's not really that good of an album. And at this point, he did that Malice in Wonderland, which was he did that documentary album, which was not very good either. So around this time, I had kind of fallen off of Snoop because his material had become a little bit more hit or miss for me. But what the album that really brought me back, and yeah, it was like almost like maybe a year later that brought me back into paying a bit more attention to Snoop was actually this album right here, the 7 Days of Funk album which he did with LA producer Dame Funk, and this came out on Stone's Throw and Doggystyle Records because Dame Funk is actually signed to Stone's Throw. So this was a bit of an independent release, and I don't even remember how I heard about this album. I want to say the Needle Drop did a review on it, which uh I think was pretty. I think he gave it a pretty positive review. I'm not sure if the Needle Drop did a review on it. Somebody was talking about it on YouTube, and that's what sparked my interest. So I went to Best Buy and they had it. At the time Best Buy was still selling CDs, and as soon as I put it into my car, I was like, okay, yeah, this is dope. Snoop is back because I think in between, well, prior to this, he had done the reggae album. Uh, I can't think of the name of the reggae. Is the reggae album called Resurrection? I think he did the reggae album, which I didn't really pay much attention to, but he quickly reverted back to hip hop. And for the most part, this album right here is marketed as an EP, but honestly, I'm gonna say it's an album because it's inspired by 1980s electro funk. So it's inspired a lot by like Zapp and Roger, you know, Steve Arrington, like that real popular electro funk that was happening in the early to mid '80s. George Clinton, Bootsy Collins, all of that. This album is very '80s funk inspired. And back in the day, albums only had maybe 10 songs at the most. So if an album put out like had 8 songs on it, that was a full album. But this is an album actually. This is actually an album, and I know it's called 7 Days of Funk, but it actually has a bonus track called The Eighth Day called Systematic, which features the Dog Pound, which is an awesome track. But great record. Like I said, inspired by that '80s electro funk, similar to like Zapp and Roger and what George Clinton was doing in the '80s as well. So you got songs like "Hit the Pavement," which features Bootsy Collins, "Let It Go," which features Val Young, who uh, who was a frequent collaborator with Death Row Records. She did a lot of songs with Tupac. She was on "To Live and Die in L.A." As a matter of fact, this is actually one of my favorite songs from the record. Then "Fading Away," "One Question" featuring Steve Arrington, a slave. Just it's a solid record, man, and it kind of brings Snoop back to that G Funk Doggystyle era of like when he was with Death Row a little bit, but also when you listen to it, it kind of transmits you to like the early '80s to like 1983. That early '80s electro funk of like that's the year that I usually pick is like 1983. It just has a 1983 vibe to it, in my opinion, and just a lot of good music, man. Him and Dame Funk. I hope they put out another project, man, because they really did their thing with this record, man. And even look at the cover art. The cover art is even '80s inspired. Like George Clinton was having cover art like this in the 1980s. You know, but just a really dope album, and this is what really made me start paying more attention to Snoop again, because I was like, okay, Snoop doing his thing with this record. He's coming back into his own, and he doesn't really rap all that much on this album either. He mainly just sings on a lot of the songs, but he does a great job. But yeah, definitely, if you've never heard 7 Days of Funk, definitely go and check it out immediately, because you're missing out on a great album. And then the next record is Bush, which came out in 2015, and this was produced by Pharrell. And this is another album that I was late on, man, because I don't know what Snoop did in between this and that, but I was a bit late on this record as well. I think it was because the first single from this album, Peaches and Cream, I didn't like it when I first heard it, but within the context of this album, it's a really good song. And again, this is a funk album. It's got elements of hip hop, but it's mainly just funk. And Snoop only raps on a few songs on this record. For the most part, he sings, and he does such a great job. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. Yeah, even though he's a master of rap music, even though he's a master of being an MC, I really think funk is him. Funk is his calling because he does such a great job when it comes to funk music, and he proves it on this record. And even though it's billed only under a Snoop Dogg album, I would say that this album is actually a collaboration between him, Pharrell, and Charlie Wilson, because all of them, three of them appear on just about every song on this record. And there's a few guest appearances. Let's see, Ti, he appears on the song called Edibles. Rick Ross and Kendrick Lamar, they're on the last song, I'm Your Dog. And Gwen Stefani, she actually appears on Runaway. I'm not too crazy about the song Edibles. I don't know why. I just feel like it doesn't really fit the mold of the rest of the album. But the rest of the songs on here are really great. Probably my favorite on here is Are You a Freak? That's a really good song. I really did the smooth, very funky vibe of that song. Uh California Road, which is one of the singles from the record, featuring Pharrell and Stevie Wonder's on there. Stevie Wonder's on that track. Let's see what else. I knew that. Oh yeah, I knew that. That's another favorite. That's another favorite one on of. Excuse me. That's another favorite one of mine, man. Yeah, this album is very early '80s funk inspired. I would say that. Yeah, to me, the vibe that I get from this album was like that 1980 to '81 period of funk music. When funk music was moving away from like all the horns and stuff, and it was getting more into the electronics around that period. Like when Zapp first dropped. That's the vibe that I get from this album. Or you could say from like '79 to like 1981. That period of funk music when it was when that electro funk was really starting to come into play. That's the kind of vibe I get from this album. Like that period of funk music, man. But it's one of Snoop's best albums, man, and I think it got slept on. I slept on it myself. I'm guilty of sleeping on it. But I enjoyed this record a whole lot. I listened to it quite a bit. So definitely, if you have a chance to listen to Bush, definitely don't miss out. Don't overlook it. Really dope album. All right, so the last album on my list of my favorite Snoop Dogg albums post Death Row is Koolaid. And this is my most recent Snoop Dogg album. This came out in 2016. I was a little late on this one as well. Well, I don't know why I didn't pick this album up. I don't know why I didn't pick it up when it first came out, but it was about a year after the album came out. And this is Snoop going back to going back to his hip hop style. Uh, it's more hip hop, more G Funk West Coast uh influenced, and I think it's one of Snoop's most best albums. I think it's one of my favorite Snoop albums. I really think he did his thing on this record. I think he really came hard on this album, and he did a lot of good. He made a lot of good tracks on this record. 10 Toes Down was a great way. I actually think that should have been the song to start the album off instead of Legend, because Legend is kind of like in that trap vibe. Which, don't get me wrong, I like trap. I like trap music, but the way Snoop did it on this record, it was a little cringy at moments. But I think 10 Toes Down is like the true opener to this record that really sets things off. And then Super Crib, which I believe was produced by Just Blaze, that was an awesome track. Bass heavy, kind of boom bapish in some form or fashion. Then Kool-Aid Man, produced by Pharrell, which has this kind of eerie, kind of hypnotic type beat. Let's see, Let Me See 'Em Up, produced and featuring Swizz Beatz. That's Swizz Beatz, Pharrell, Dr. Dre, and Primo. Those are Snoop's producers, man. He should just work with them guys all the freaking time. But Swizz Beatz is another producer that does really well when it comes to Snoop albums. Let's see, what's another? So My Cars, which that's actually My Cars. The instrumental was actually a Jay Dilla song. I think that originally appeared on his album Donuts. But yeah, Snoop kills that beat. Then Affiliated featuring Trick Trick. Uh, man, there's just a lot of good songs on this album that Snoop really came through. Is it one of Snoop's best albums? I don't know. I think it could be one of his best albums. Now, I don't know if I would hold it up in the same fashion as like some of these early ones like RNG and Paid the Cost to Be the Boss. But I think for the times that we're living in now, for present times, these recent times, I think it's one of Snoop's best albums. And I don't know what it is, but it seems like every time Snoop drops an album with an animated cover, similar to Doggystyle, he usually ends up putting out a good album. I don't know if anybody's ever caught on to that. It's like that artwork kind of inspires him to to go in that to like go in that vein or whatever. But yeah, Kool-Aid, a really dope album that I really enjoy listening to. But yeah, that's it for this video on my favorite Snoop Dogg albums post Death Row. And for anybody that might have stopped listening to Snoop after Death Row, or who hasn't paid much attention to Snoop's albums in recent years, like, yes, he does have a few duds in his discography, especially after that blue carpet treatment. But if nothing else, man, definitely check out some of these albums that I just presented in this video, man, because I will argue with anybody that, yeah, Doggystyle is a great record. It is a great record. It's hard to really measure up to that. But Snoop has a few classes. He has a few classics under his belt. Doggystyle ain't the only classic he has. Just like Illmatic isn't the only classic that Nas has. As much as people herald Illmatic, that's not the only good album that Nas made. Some may say it's his greatest. I don't know. Personally, I like it was written better, but that's for another video, man. We talking about Snoop right now. But again, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And as always, hit the like button, share this video, subscribe to my channel, and just be on the lookout for more videos and more good content. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day and a blessed week. And as always, love, peace, and music. Peace out.